Hello, welcome to the Buddha the Basin. Yesterday I did a podcast on Scorpio, the death and rebirth of the human race based upon the acknowledgement of Jesus Christ and of extraterrestrials. And I'm not sure how well that's going to land, but I know that over the weekend I had very significant conversations with dear friends about this idea of being in service to others and of keeping your connection to the Holy Spirit so you can properly be engaged and aligned while serving others. And I was essentially shamed, for having been really over the past 20 years not nearly as committed to serving others as I have been with serving myself with, knowledge and awareness, but that becomes just a grotesque consumerism, a gorging, a binging of information, right? Binge watching a Netflix series on surviving death or near death experiences, or binge watching Candace Owens or Alex Jones, as I used to. I used to binge watch sports, and I still do on the weekends, football games. So it's kind of in terms of this radical honesty in Mercury retrograde, bringing that mental apparatus to reflect on oneself while one is just witnessing, because of this Saturn return aspect that I think all of us are going through, even though we're not all in the Saturn year 28 or 56. I do think in terms of our planetary civilization, we're going through a Saturn return cycle. What are our real values? What do we stand for? Have we built a life that is based upon those values? Are we living that life? Or are we trapped in the false self, caged in the beast cell, and just trying to satisfy the beast with short-term fixes for these long-term desires that, as I'm going on 45 years old, starts to become clear, may not realize some of them. Some were not meant to be, and some are just due to what? Not pursuing them, becoming lazy, and allowing this so-called mark of the beast system to slowly saturate and permeate our psyche so that we're almost asking for free money and surveillance. I mean, just leave that out there. Got to keep an eye on everybody now. You got to surveil. Got to keep everybody safe. Got to surveil social media. Got to surveil the streets. Got to surveil the classrooms. You know, and of course, I who would argue against monitoring social media for the sake of the children, or the classroom for the sake of the children? And who would like to see people starve when they have families? Obviously, nobody. And yet, foisted upon this system will be an AI digital overlord, and we all know it. Next it'll be the air traffic controllers. Will soon replace them with the AI system, and the banking system. When we have the next banking collapse, we'll just blame the bankers and replace some of them too. Slowly but surely we'll be replacing people with automated processes and artificial intelligence, um, based systems, that crunch the numbers and require very minimal human oversight. And we can have almost anybody employed. Well, probably not the most intelligent people, just people with a small degree of intelligence, you know, just smart enough to run the machines, or not even to run the machines, just smart enough to take the data and send it up the ladder, so to speak. So this is the sort of era that we're in now. It's the last stages, the last days before the harvest, if you will. Who knows when the harvest will be, but if you want to be among the good fruit harvested, well, you need to be of service to others. 51%. That's what the law of one material makes clear. You must be slightly less selfish. And I admit that's a challenge for me. That's why I'm sitting here recording this as opposed to doing anything with my hands. I understand that my mind and my voice I can use to serve other people. I'm still not all that confident in what I can do with my hands in terms of building things. I can play music, you know, but a lot of us are going to have this wishy-washy response. I'm not so sure about this serving others. What does that really mean? It's left kind of vague, right? Well, I go to work, I have a family, and yet you know in your heart when you're being fully present that you're sort of able to serve, that you feel good about this being fully present, that you're not focused on your own desires, and you feel more open and you feel slightly more energized. And I think that's the trick. It's this leaning, suddenly you're leaning forward a little bit. You're curious. You're not sure why, but your body's endocrine system is can be re-geared, retooled to find new goals and new sort of emotional states of motivation that have not been tapped into. Things that are more subtle that require a psychic driver within the self, within the psyche and the heart, but things that are probabilistic. I'm just talking about low hanging fruit for all of us, ways we could be of service to others that are right there at the doorstep. We just have to open the door. So for me, it could be tutoring students, helping them with writing, or continuing my own um, podcast or music or writing. It could be using my strength a bit more, being of assistance in some ways that I haven't considered yet. Maybe working on the land, gardening, perhaps even farming. Certainly, yard work in general. Perhaps it could be in the area of building, or which is something I had not yet thought about. But certainly in the area of cleaning, which is something I hate to do. But I have two good arms, two good legs. I could clean up more and clean up for other people, you know, deliver food. These are things that a lot of us just, when we open ourselves, how could I better serve others? It does something to the mind. As I was saying yesterday, there's higher chakras above the crown, and this passive state that I know I get myself into from just binge watching, where suddenly after about 3 hours, I just feel completely worthless. You start off on some hot pursuit, but it's like your soul and psyche knows if you cannot produce something, if you cannot take action in response, then it's of no use to you. If you cannot create some product with it, produce something of value to yourself and therefore to others, then you've really wasted your time. Sad to say. Um, so just to, I'm reminded that I did do some tarot card readings of some friends of mine on Friday, because I often think I can serve people by bringing the tarot cards and letting them put their hands on the tarot cards, shuffle the cards, and see what their own higher self has laid out for them. So I am pleased. And, on Friday, I was called upon to continuously play on the ukulele. I love you and Buddha too, because it does seem like down here in Cajun country in Louisiana, injecting Buddha and Islam into the conversation is something I'm called upon to do. Um, Not because I have dislike for Christ, it just because I love Buddha, and also, well, you can argue I love Muhammad. I don't really, I wouldn't use those words. I love God. I love the concept of God as it is conveyed in the Quran through the deity character Allah. Allah is sometimes a we, us or a we, like an Elohim group. Sometimes Allah is that which is mighty and the wise, this intelligent infinity, because Islam was trying to capture both aspects of God that had been conveyed through the prophets and through Moses. There was a plurality in Elohim group. There's also this single source of our whole universe. Both those things are true. Both those things, in a way, are God to humans. There's a group that looked after things. This Anunnaki group, this Elohim group. There were other groups besides them. It's just that group took us from Mars. This was what Danny Jones was saying yesterday with Matt LaCroix. That humans were on Mars. That's what Joe McGonigal had remote viewed, and some war takes place, and this is what the raw information suggests, that Yahweh, or Yahweh Inky perhaps, brings us here to Earth and creates this Lemurian civilization, which is peaceful. This was about 75,000 years ago. Okay, that this is where supposedly we actually get our human start. Atlantis comes later. Lemuria sinks, according to the raw material, and then Atlantis sort of surfaces, one might say. Atlantis, we have different extraterrestrial groups coming in to offer assistance. This apparently pisses off Enlil, who's our Satan character, who is the God figure in the Adam and Eve. He walks in the cool of the garden. He's the one looking for Adam. He's the one upset because they've eaten the fruit, whereas Inky would have been the one to, as the snake, to offer them this knowledge, which Billy Meyer's group says was some kind of a iboga African, tree, like a hallucinogenic experience that Adam and Eve would have had, which would have opened their eyes. They would have seen their nakedness. And this was something that Enlil did not want. He wanted us to be just smart enough to go down to the mines, to mine for the gold, or to do whatever work we were tasked with doing. Because in that story, although we were taken from Mars, we were made to work, one might say. It's maybe that's two stories. Maybe we were taken from, maybe we were made to work long before, and then the Mars things happen. The Mars happens later. Maybe it's all one story, that hey, we need some souls to inhabit these beings. Well, these Martians, they're going to need a chance to come and start their experience three-dimensional, third density life. So we'll use them. And so it's somehow approved by this council on Saturn. It's allowed to take place. And yet, so other groups then get involved. Okay, well, we'll help them too. We'll send some of our own people to incarnate, and they'll volunteer, and we'll come oversee our own little civilization of Atlantis. So the Ra group comes in. This Quetzalcoatl group comes in. We don't know if it's from Venus and then the Pleiades also, or what have you. It just multiple groups come in. And Enlil, apparently, of the Anunnaki, this character also referred to as you, and I think it's Yaldabaoth in the Gnostic books. He's the one who, in the Atrahasis story, calls for the flood. He also calls for disease to destroy us. He calls for many things to destroy us. It just so happens that this whole younger Dryas, older Dryas, whether it's 14,500 years ago, this older or the younger, the 12,000, it just seems very likely this was some event that they either caused to happen or allowed to happen. It's more likely that it was a surprise, because there's the woolly mammoth who dies with the food still digested in these trees, which froze with green leaves on them. So it seems more like a cataclysm. And so this planet was kind of being shown the ways. We kind of start late after this Mars thing fails, after Venus has a civilization like billions of years ago, according to Ra. This other planet blows up, small day planet, and so we're growing something, we're going somewhere. Then we have this terrible flood. These cultures go underground or just die out, and even all the good extraterrestrials, they sort of have to leave, in a hurry, or they die. Uh, and then we have sort of Ra, in the Law of One says they come back later to the Egyptian culture. Quetzalcoatl, if you will, comes back to this Mesoamerican culture, and they try again. The Anunnaki, if you will, try to reconstitute the stories. So the Babylonians kind of bring back the original Sumerian myth, but now you have this other figure, this Enki son figure, Marduk, who is like the Lucifer character, who then makes himself the hero of humanity, when really it was more of like his father. And certainly his father and his uncle Enlil were the two that were the original two sort of co-regent, co-rulers of humanity, the Zeus and Poseidon characters, if you will. Um, the Loki and Thor characters as well. Although again, we get Enki the trickster because Enki speaks to Atrahasis Noah through a reed wall. Because he's made an oath he can't literally speak to them and interfere, so he speaks through a wall. And later with Moses, he speaks through a burning bush. But after the Israelites choose this desire for power, this is a kind of what everything is hinging on right now. It's like fear leads to a craving for power to protect us. And if you fall into that trap, you end up with negative overlords, which is what the Israelites get after, when Moses is up on Mount Sinai, which is not really where they think it is. It's in Saudi Arabia, but that's a different point. While he's up there, his people and his own brother, if you will, they're making the golden calf, and they look for they're already perverted while he's speaking with the good Yahweh character. Then he sort of smashes those, and this is when, according to Ra, he interacts with a different entity now. This is how the Israelites become sort of bloodthirsty murderers, and as they try to ask this Yahweh character for things, they get snakes instead. And it's unclear exactly if it's the good ones, and the Enki's little good group as well as Enlil's bad group. But it definitely seems like we know that Moses dies. We know that in Yahweh, good or bad, most likely the bad guy, right? He makes Moses and Aaron's son take off Aaron's robes, and they sort of strip him more or less naked, and he goes up to the top of the mountain to die. And then Moses suffers a similar fate. Between these two things, he talks about how the Anunnaki, probably Anu gave each Anunnaki of his children a different part of Earth to rule over. That India went to a certain Anunnaki, and Egypt went to another, and Israel, and Jacob belongs to Yahweh, which is, so it's like we're his property. And that's kind of the way Moses explains it. There are other Anunnaki members. Yahweh is not the only God, and he's like a son of Anu, and the Anunnaki had divided up the earth. We got stuck with this one. That's what he sort of communicates. That gets mistranslated over time, but the story has always been there. And the fact is, the good extraterrestrials were trying to open us up towards love and compassion, making provision for our needs to have nourishment and energy and intelligence. But ultimately, the goal would be compassion. And you find that throughout the Judaism as well as Islam. Usury is like a big example. Like you find it in the Law of Moses. Don't charge interest. You find that once again in the Holy Quran. So it's like this, just one little simple example of how we're not following what the good Anunnaki, if you will, or Allah, Yahweh taught us, because we're still practicing usury, putting people into debt, putting students into debt, putting young families into debt. This money magic, and we know Jesus overturns the money changers. So he was being service to others when he was even being aggressive, when he was, agitating. That was still serving others. He didn't do that for selfish purposes. And so it's this, we understand that the monetary system, with the money printed by fiat, printed from without any backing currency by the Federal Reserve, this system is coming to its end after 112 years, and the dollar is virtually worthless. And we see a need for some new form of currency, this new, and we see a competition between this Russia, China, BRICS system and our sort of system, and Western hegemony of London and New York and Europe, kind of facing off, over countries like Venezuela and then Ukraine, and countries with a lot of resources. And then you see like hurricanes in Jamaica because they have lithium there. So we're seeing a battle for resources on the worldwide stage. So how do you be service to others? Is it taking it to the street saying no more kings? And I don't know, because these things are so subtle. Um, and you could always be trapped into being a pawn in the game, like those people who went to the Capitol on January 6th were just pawns in the Christian Zionist game. Now we see that Trump is knee deep in Zionism, and he can't say anything about Epstein. He can't say anything about Israel. We can't say anything about Brigitte Macron, while the world is like, oh, she's a man, baby. Can't say anything. Trump just can't say a word about Epstein or about Zionism. He only can joke that Miriam Adelson is more uh, dutiful to Israel than she is to the United States. He can only muster that feeble joke, which he does at the Knesset. He's not doing it on Capitol Hill. He's not doing it on the Jimmy Kimmel show, where it probably would be effective. He's doing it in Israel. It's for them, not for us. Israel first. And now we know about the Mormons and how the Mormon church, ever since 1840, supported Israel taking over Palestine, and just this weird sort of white supremacy, neo-Nazi thing that is like the last vestige. It's like the last thing to go. We can't. Charlie Kirk, he's like this martyr for this cause of just saying, well, this white supremacy makes no sense without the connection to Zionism. They're the white supremacists, the Zionists, not Jews per se, because there are plenty of Jews who don't support this, but the Zionists. And the Zionists aren't just Jews. They're not just Christians. A lot of the billionaires are Zionists because they just want a system of control. And that's what Gaza was under until they had their October 7th. They were under control. Then they were allowed to attack and kidnap, so they could be totally exterminated. Not the soldiers, but the people. And that's what's happening now. Now we're being provoked as a human race, or in the United States certainly, with ICE and the shortages to come, and the budget deficits, and the government shutdown, and everything else. We're going to be thrown in each other's faces. But honesty and compassion are going to point us the way. That's what service to others means. You have that radical honesty of people. You care enough about them to serve them with the truth. And you have compassion, even if you're telling them that the vaccine is horrible, it's injuring people, it's continuing to kill, and that the weather is completely being controlled. I mean, I saw Dane Wigington just yesterday on Tucker. That's amazing. I was jubilant because it seemed like our mission is finally just about over. I mean, although Dane did not like Tucker using the term chemtrails on his masthead, he was very much, I'm sure, very much pleased. He feels he can probably, dare I say, die happy. I mean, this guy's been in the wilderness with this issue for 30 years, at least 25. I can recall Geoengineering Watch in 2007. So it's been a good 18 years for this issue of controlling the weather to go mainstream in 2025. So service to others is staying with these topics, not in a way that is hurtful or argumentative, but just staying aware of the suffering and always being prepared to alleviate somebody else's suffering, at least by sharing with them information that could help them be prepared for the future. Whether it's telling the young mothers, don't give your kids all these vaccines. If you must, do one at a time. But the studies show less is more. Less is more health. You know, if I had to do it all over again, neither of my kids would have had any shots at all. So, but I don't mean that I'm losing my service to others. I could feel I'm losing my crown chakra engagement. Don't mean to get defeated or get water myself down. There's no need. Everything is on the up and up, and everything is happening now. You have Candace Owens, #1 podcast, Dane Wigington on Tucker Carlson, David Icke back on YouTube. So, draining the energy of children as part of the child sacrifice ritual is going to be finally and fully exposed. This non-human force, it needs to be examined. There was a non-human force that was behind the CIA's mind control with Jim Jones and Charles Manson. Can we give these young people enough drugs and suggestions to make them want to kill themselves or kill others? It's still happening. Can we mind control enough people to take a product that will sterilize them? That's the level of inhumanity we see, because up until recently, I will take the positive view of Elena Denon. The gray extraterrestrials were creating a hybrid race, and we're going to give this planet to this hybrid race. They were going to eliminate all of us and slowly but surely bring in the hybrids that they would interface with to control the planet, and while they kind of were over above them. I hoped. I mean, that's what Whitney Strieber and that's what John Mack was pursuing when he died in that car accident. That's what Whitney Strieber has continued on the track of putting out there. That's what Elena Denon is suggesting was the plan, to use computers, if you will. We would see our greatest potential future possibility for technology and mind expansion all coming through computers. I watched the Explorers. Our key to anti gravity will be through computers. Our key to consciousness breakthroughs, computers. And we were fed all this because the computer is a great way to surveil us and to, you know, to spy on us. We give all of our data and information to DARPANet, to Facebook, and to, Facebook and Google are CIA products. They want to capture our data, create a digital twin, and then essentially let that digital twin be given full access to all of our bodily information. And then that's the account that gets paid, if you will, this digital avatar version of ourselves that will be the minder for us. Like, hey, man, you better stop. You just turn that off. It will just turn it off for us. I was telling my wife, it'll turn off our connection to whatever it is we're trying to connect to, whether it's within us or on the internet. So service to others means this is not really going to happen. I don't believe this whole thing comes to fruition. I don't know how or what will stop this. It will stop this event if it's Russia, as Edgar Casey foresaw. The country of Russia is not moving towards this digital plan. Seems like China might be, but Russia isn't. So maybe that's why Russia had to be destroyed at all cost. I also think the Albert Pike plan was at play, trying to bring in Islam and smash Christian Zionism against Islam to defeat defeat the monotheistic religions all, and turn us off of all the religions and prepare the way for the one world worship of Lucifer. That's what Albert Pike had suggested, to bring in the communists, the Islam, Zionism, and just smash them all together. So you have us going to war with China, the communists, going to war against Iran, Islam, morally and spiritually and economically defeating us. So we're desperate. We'll turn to anything. And here comes this digital new world order. Maybe we got Prince William going to be anointed as king at some point. We'll get this new world king, so I still think that's the plan. Control the owning the weather by 2025. Check. The weather is completely controlled and owned. They gave us a little freeze in Louisiana, 32 last night. Earlier freeze than usual. Nothing to see here. The weather is obviously fine. Climate, this global warming, no, don't worry about that. So remember, service to self, it is seeking the truth, but it's active. Number one, it's active and it's a selfless enterprise. It's the You can argue it's the high beta brainwave going into the gamma, which is your problem solving, 40 hertz cycles per second. You can tell when you're in an active state, actively seeking, and I think that seeking state is what Ross says. That's service to others. Just from you being in a state of seeking, your brain wave doesn't just stay in your brain, it affects other people. And your problem solving wave of energy could actually help other people solve their problems. So just because you're in a room with a computer, but you're actively trying to be of service to others, and you're not feeling any extra fear or aggression as you try to solve this problem. You're not trying to make the answer conform to pre-existing expectations. You're open to your gut and intuition in your heart to give you the answer. That's really what we're meant to do at this level of consciousness, because we don't know how we'll affect others and where the answer comes from, but this is the way we can receive the answer. I had worked on this in college with my professor at the University of Louisiana at Lafayette, Dr. Sabrata Dasgupta, who was in charge of the cognitive science department at the time. He wanted to work on the unconscious, the eureka moment, how the idea just comes to you. And we all know it's true. We all know the best songs come just about fully written. I Love You and Buddha Too came to not Shooter Jennings, not Waylon Jennings, Mason Jennings, while he was riding around in his van. It was a perfect download. The Quran was given to Muhammad, by Gabriel. He told to write this down. That's not exactly what I'm talking about. But many inventors, they have a dream like the benzene ring dream. How do these carbon atoms work? And it's like a snake eating itself, and that's how we visualize the benzene ring. And these benzene rings are related to our human consciousness. That's what Stuart Hameroff was describing with his work on anesthesia and these gases, which form these benzene rings, which can seemingly turn off our consciousness. So other parts of the brain is still working, but consciousness goes out. This aromatic aspect of consciousness. Where it's unclear where it goes, but that's the thing. This problem-solving brainwave of 40 hertz cycles and above, this gamma brainwave, leads you to insights. That's especially if you have the low end as well with your breath. If you're doing slow, deep breaths while you're speaking with radical honesty towards problem solving, you actually have the low end, which is the theta brainwave, which is about four hertz cycles per second. That's very slow, but that's as your brain is lit up with the gamma. The theta is sort of slowly but surely helping you become grounded. You're working simultaneously towards integration of your left and right cerebral hemispheres in a way that's more total, as well as connection to the earth through your feet, your overall energetic sphere. And that's what David Icke was talking about, that this sphere of energy is what the negative extraterrestrial forces, in particular the reptilians, wish to feed on. This is what Corey Good and others have called loosh. So I've just basically felt it in my feet and in my shins. This energy, the electrical or the ionization of this sort of plasma current going around my body, which is rhythmically related to my blood circulation. It's allowing my field to extend further and further from me, because the hertz cycles in my brain's rhythm have connected to my heart, and now it's connected to my breath, and I'm in a good place as my field begins to grow and expand. I'm in a stable chi rhythm. This is precisely what what the negative forces don't want as from us as adults. They want us stressed, locked into and having a very weakened energetic shell or field. As kids, they like to just destroy it or dismantle it or just drink from it. One of those two. They really, because this field is the field of our interconnectedness. It's also called the Merkaba. It's the light body spirit vehicle, the little sphere that you see in that movie Explorers, which you can watch on YouTube, which I'll probably finish watching tonight. That's really what it all boils down to. Service to others allows your brain to go from that low beta to the higher beta up to the gamma while remaining anchored in that theta, which is the meditative, insightful place. You're not becoming selfish. You're never allowing your hands to grasp it. You understand there's nothing there for you to grasp. You see, that's the difference, and that's what this gentleman. I think it's like he's the guy who has the kids in Tanzania. It's like John Saint Bonawama. I'm not saying it right. He's a very interesting guy, and he was talking about the digital prison and the digital mark of the beast system, and how right now both 144 and 666 they both end up with the number nine. That's the number of complete sort of consciousness is nine, the number of completion. It's seven in terms of the colors, and there's seven notes before the eighth, but nine is just the last of the numbers. Nine is the complete reaching of all of humanity, and one way to reach that is through service to others, and the other way is through this digital mark of the beast system. That's what he was saying. And which one of those do you resonate with right now? Depends if you're service to self or service to others. If you're service to self, if you're constantly, what can I get a grasp on quickly and easily? Well, it's never been easier to get a grasp on something via the internet, the connectivity and the speed, you know. But it's just a dopamine, circuit, short circuit, because you no sooner do you have it than you desire something else, and so it's going to drive the left hemisphere of the brain just frantic, and you'll be depleted of your energy if you continue down that path. You'll be looking for alcohol to consume by 2 in the afternoon, because the pressure of being happy is just overwhelming. What do I do to stay happy? Well, you serve other people. So you never are given this impossible problem to solve with half of your brain, because that's what you do. You say, well, I want sex, so I grab it. That means one half of your brain is only thinking about that right now. That's your left hemisphere, all the possible girls that you could go and have sex with, if you will. That's what, but that's going to lead to a lower beta brainwave, as the other half of your brain is going to be like, well, that doesn't compute with my core values, and your gut. And so you're going to end up turning your body off, and your body will become very confused. You can try to find reasons, which will usually involve victimization of others, and, oh, well, nobody, they're not giving you enough. You deserve more, and so there are a lot of ways you can create this false self with a whole bunch of goals that really are not even the true goals of your organism, much less your higher self. And all that comes from serving the false self, which is usually in the left hemisphere. But as John Saint, it's not Bonawama, forget, I don't know his man's name. He said the archons are giving you those goals. They fed you, whether it's gluttony, sex, greed, gambling, pornography, all these diversions, all these services that you render to yourself, which really serve them, because then you weaken your overall immune system and your energy field in the process by giving away your energy. And it's only by letting go of those desires and deciding to serve others and just be open to being led, if you will, surrendering to God, which is what Islam means, that you can get out of that horrible, miserable state of being completely drained and having half of your brain just like reaching for food or drugs or sex or anything, just to give you this sense of pleasure, which justifies your existence. Really, you're justifying the left hemisphere of your brain being the commander, which is what the psychiatrists now say is what's so foolhardy about our modern world, that really the right hemisphere is far more intelligent. It just is less verbally acute or equipped. So the right hemisphere is more connected to your heart, to your body, to your actual feelings, um, to a global sense of what's going on, but it doesn't run the show for most of us. Uh, So that's kind of what needs to change. But how will it change? It comes through this commitment of serving other people, which I'm saying takes the energy from out of your right hand. You're not trying to grab anything anymore. Allows your brain waves to go up, to actually get higher as you approach the gamma brainwave, which is being in the flow or the zone. As you lose who you are, because you're losing this idea of you can hold on to something, even the idea of who you are. All you're trying to do is find that answer, find that insight that will just re-anchor your consciousness at a higher overall vibration. And if you do that, well, now somebody else can do it too. Your energy can sort of resound and resonate and go redound, if you will, to others. And that's the real joy and the blessing, and that's the real peace. Om Shanti. Om